I don't know, I get so excited for these, but I do. Sorry, not sorry. This is just so much for fun. Fern in my Ferda. Okay. I'm so excited, I can't even speak. First of all, these aren't my guitars. I'm not gonna drop a sick beat. But yeah, this is my future office when I go full-time at the church, and it's technically the band's hanging guitar area. I don't know. This is like an ongoing feud with me and the band of whose office this is. So today we're going to talk about books, which ones I like, which ones I hate. We're going to do the same thing, picking them out of the bag, getting my initial reactions of my, because that's great, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so let's get started. Okay, let's do this. Why do I say that? First book. Harry Potter. Now, Harry Potter. Now, this might seem a little weird to even talk about this because it's like, well, duh, Harry Potter's a good book. Let me explain to you. When you are homeschooled, Harry Potter is one of the 7 deadly sins. This book is going to send you to hell, okay? That was what I was taught all my life. Harry Potter, no, don't watch the movies, don't read the book, don't look at it, don't talk about it, don't think about it. No. So it's about like, I think a year or two ago that we finally got pressured into watching it by my sister, and we absolutely loved it. And then I think a few months later I decided to start reading the books, and I read all of them, and it was fantastic, and holy cow. I'm not gonna go with the plot of the book, I'm pretty sure most of y'all know it, but reading the book after watching it really gave me so much in-depth like look into his world and other things, because they obviously can't put everything in the movies, and reading it made it even more special. And I just highly suggest, if you are scared to read it because you're afraid you're going to be demonically possessed, as a non-demonic possessed person, I vouch for this book. Jesus is Lord. This one doesn't have a cover. This one is Moon Spinners. I watched the movie. It had Haley Mills. It's like from this, I believe it was made in the 60s. Disney made it. And it was one of my favorite movies that I watched because it was set in Greece, and I think at the time we were living in Greece when I saw it, so it's like, oh, this is cool. And it's an amazing book, but it is nothing like the movie. I went into it very confused. Obviously, Disney had to make it, you know, suitable for children to watch. And here it's like murder and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, yeah, that probably shouldn't have been added into the movie. But it's an amazing book. The main reason why I really liked it was because the girl, the main character in this book, was so analytical, and you don't get that with a lot of female characters. It's mainly like emotions and blah blah blah, but she was very like assessing situations, figuring out the best like possible thing that she could do to make everything better, blah blah blah. I said that so professionally right there. Anyways, she is just amazing. I really liked this book. I really liked all the dynamics in it, the plot twist in it towards the end. Oh my gosh, this was just an amazing book to read. I'm sorry it has no cover. It was really pretty too. It just tore off. I keep books in my backpack and they just get abused. So, but yes, read this book. It's so good. This is a book that I was like, why? This is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I believe at the time I just finished reading The Book Thief, and this sounded so similar to it that I was like, yes. No, it's about a girl who's blind who lives in Nazi-occupied Paris, and then you have another character in it, a boy who is part of the Hitler Youth, and it seemed like a really good book, and I was like, and parts of it was just so beautifully written, so I loved how the writing was. That was really good. The problem was the plot, because there was no plot. Once I walked away from the book, I kind of was like, what happened? Whoa. It just wasn't there for me. It did not tie up loose ends. It didn't, you know, pack a punch. There wasn't this big finale ending. It wasn't like something that I was like, oh, this is amazing. It just kind of fell short, especially after reading The Book Thief that had everything going for it. That was absolutely amazing. So that probably just didn't help. Maybe if I read this book first and then The Book Thief, maybe I would have been fine, but I didn't. And I just didn't like it that much. It just was slack-a-lackin'. Yes! So this is the book that ruined me, okay? This is The Picture of Dorian Gray. Oh my gosh, this is glare. The picture of Dorian Gray. This book was amazing. This completely wrecked my life. I kind of was just like, screw all other books, because the main reason why I loved this book so much was the dialogue. It was so thick, so deep. Like, they went into so much stuff and so many issues, like so many things that these like two characters would just like, or these like conversations with these friends, they would just bounce off of each other and just keep going and going and have all these theories about things, and it was amazing. The book, like, the plot itself is like crazy. One of my favorite things about books is dialogue. You probably will hear me say that a million times. If a book is lacking, it's probably the dialogue. If it is like, woohoo, it's the dialogue. Because it's so important for me, because I like to see conversations. I like to read about it and see how people are talking back and forth, because sometimes it's really hard to relate that into writing. Talking is way easier. When you see movies, sometimes you can kind of get away with it, but you cannot get away from bad dialogue. It is very obvious. It's very out there, and this one definitely delivers on amazing dialogue. Okay. I'm trying to be okay. I'm trying to hold in there, guys. I just finished this book today, and that is one of the main reasons why I was like, I want to do a book review, because I was so mad. I have to get out my feelings about this book. And it's great. I didn't even mean to set it up like this, but after talking about the amazing dialogue in Dorian Gray, now we're going to talk about the utter crappiness that I was... Okay, this is Ready Player One. I read this book because one of my guy friends was reading it, and I was like, okay. And then my other guy friend was like, hey, they're actually making a movie out of this book, and Spielberg is directing it. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds awesome. This is basically like 80s just threw up in here. So basically in this book, the year is 2044, the world sucks. There is a creator of a world called Oasis. It's basically like virtual reality type of thing. The creator, who is like 80s obsessed, because that's when he grew up, it was in the 80s, it dies, and before he dies, he puts in his will that whoever finds this hidden Easter egg gets everything of his. The whole Oasis, everything. And so everyone's trying to find it, no one does, and then this book is about this guy unlocking the first clue, and everything just kind of goes from there. So it sounded really cool. My friend like reassured me like you don't have to know everything about video games or the 80s to understand it. I did appreciate that they really did explain everything very well. I only had to search up a couple things that I was like, what is this? And so I wasn't like upset about that. I was following along. The problem was that this was just so much video gaming crap. Okay, so when the movie comes out, I'm sure that it's going to be amazing. First of all, Spielberg is directing it. Second of all, the way they tell it is like, oh, this would look really good in a movie, but reading it, watching it, I'm watching the book right now. Reading it is really difficult because it's no talking. Like, it's just so much explaining and this guy just doing stuff, and that's really boring. There is no plot twist, nothing surprising happens. Exactly what you think is gonna come out of this book comes out of this book. The characters does not develop. There's nothing that we learn from life. There's no bettering this horrible place that they live in outside of this virtual world. And I don't like YA love interest because no one does them right. Nobody, I have not read one YA book that I'm like, that was a love story that was told so well. This guy is like in love with an avatar because you can change your appearance, you can make yourself look however you want, and he's basically in love with this other avatar that he has no idea who she is like in the real world. And it just annoys me so much because he literally tells her that he's like in love with her, and thank God for that character. She was like, this is not real, like what the heck. But like it just bothered me that it even happened. Like I really was like, what? And so the book kind of started going downhill for me from there. It just no good dialogue whatsoever. It's just all action, all video gaming. I put my joystick to the right and to the left, and I got this Pac-Man and all this stuff and all these steps that they have to go through. I just read the entire book so quickly just to get to the end thinking something's gonna happen. There is a bad guy in this book who is trying to take over this thing, and they don't even have like a last battle together. They don't like have any confrontation at the very end. He just gets arrested by police like far off in the world, and then the other guy is like, oh, I'm rich now. Like, I'm sorry if I ruined this book for everybody. I don't really care. Spoiler alerts. But that was supposed to be a hashtag, by the way. Hashtag spoiler alerts. But I just don't want anybody reading this. It really did suck. And hopefully the movie's better. Hopefully everything turns out better. I just was not a fan of it. Blah. So this is A Grief Observed, which is kind of different than all the other books that I have in here, but I kind of wanted to put this in it because oh my gosh. I stumbled upon this book, I think it was a year or two after my dad passed away. I was literally just in Barnes & Noble going through the books and stuff, and I stumbled upon C.S. Lewis section, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Literally flipped to like the first page and read this. No one ever told me that grief felt so like fear. I'm not afraid, but the sensation is like being afraid. Holy cow. I literally like sat down in Barnes & Noble and just kept on reading and reading and reading, and then was like, okay, I'm buying this. This was basically a book that C.S. Lewis wrote when his wife passed away. It's like just his thoughts, his raw emotions just put on the page, and I loved it because you see so much conflict going on in him, and we all know And we all know C.S. Lewis to be a Christian-based author, and his books are absolutely amazing and everything. And you really see a struggle in here, which I really appreciated, because I feel sometimes so many Christians pretend like there aren't any struggles that they ever have, or they ever go through, or doubts that they ever had. But he's very open about it, but like at the end, there's just so much resolution of his feelings, his emotions, and you really see him going through the grieving process. And I would suggest this for people to read who have gone through grief, or even if you haven't. Like honestly, this would help you understand other people who have gone through grief. Like everything he said in this book, I was like, yep, that's how I felt and everything. And so it's just one of the most amazing books I've ever read about emotions like that when you're grieving for someone. So I highly recommend this book. I mean, it wrecked me. Next book. Pride and Prejudice. Oh my gosh. So I read Pride and Prejudice basically because my sister was like, oh my gosh, you'd love that book. So I was like, you know what? She's a big fan of Jane Austen. I want to read it. But she told me all this stuff about Jane Austen that I had no idea about. Apparently she is on the Myers-Briggs personality test. She's an INTJ, which that's exactly what my sister Stephanie is. And they're very analytical. They're very analytical thinkers. They aren't very emotional. They're not driven by their emotions. They just have very clear, like, whatever. If you think about that in a woman back in this day being like that, that doesn't fly over very well. People just think that you're rude and they don't understand you. So because of Jane Austen's personality type, she never put herself in her female leads, but she put herself in her male leads. So you'll see like Mr. Darcy, you know, he's very like, actually I have the quote, hold on, I'm gonna read it directly. My good opinion once lost is lost forever. That's the INTJ wrapped up in a nutshell. So she put her personality in their type, which basically almost every single one of them just misunderstood. Nobody gets them, nobody understands them. But once they are understood, then it's like, oh, we're like shining a light on their character and their personality. And it's like, oh, that makes sense now. And I love that. I also love they're falling in love because like towards the end they like literally have a whole conversation with each other about like reasons why they like each other, like this very insightful talk about like, oh well, I thought you were this way but then you showed yourself to be this way. And I love that. So many times in books it's just like, oh, I like you, you're cute stuff. That doesn't fly with me. I'm not going to read a book that's like that. That's just stupid. I like to understand the logical thinking of people falling in love. I want to understand, why did you? What was the process for that? All that kind of stuff. And she delivers. Amazing, amazing book. Absolutely loved it. Oh, and Stephanie got me this book. I remember. So read it. But thank you again for watching these videos. I'm out. It is freezing.